Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for coming. Lovely to see you all here today. First day of AKLF. It already feels like half the festival is over. And welcome, Upamanyu. Welcome back to Calcutta. And welcome particularly to discuss this very, very brand new book, which has just arrived in our hands. This is a book with an unusual story. And the book is called, it also has an unusual title. Can you hear me? Yeah? Okay. It has an unusual title. It's called Lorenzo Searches for the Meaning of Life. Not quite the kind of title you expect from somebody who is known for shorter, snappier, or very quirky titles. The Memories of the Indian State, was that one of them?
Welfare,
Yes.
welfare. Hello. Welfare state, yeah.
Yeah, welfare state, right. So what I started reading this book and I was quite taken aback, I have to say, and very surprised. Because although one has learned to expect the unexpected from Upamanyu, this was truly quite an unexpected subject. It was an unexpected kind of texture that the book had. And I can't do any better than just read from the back of the book just to give you a quick idea of what the book is about. In the final month of the year 1980, a young man, aged 22, visits a Benedictine monastery in the province of Padua, Italy. He becomes a monk. He travels across the world to a village in Bangladesh, and over some 20 years, he learns some things about life and the love of God. This is his story. Now, a young man in the 1980s would be roughly around my age, right? Now, probably. Deciding to become a monk, moving from this tiny little village in Italy where he's in a monastery, coming to Bangladesh where he's in an even tinier little village in another little monastery. I mean, what is going on and why did you write this story, Upamanyu?
Thank you, Anjum. I should begin by saying that in essence, it's a true story. It is a work of fiction, but it's based on the life of someone that my wife and I know. I'll take a few minutes to tell you how the book germinated. For the last 6 years, we've been staying in Colombo. And in 2019, in the apartment block in which we still stay, I was in the lift with a white man and a woman who was clearly subcontinental, from the subcontinent, and they were speaking to each other in Bengali, odd enough, but in a few seconds I realized that it was a Bengali I hadn't heard since my days in the late 70s in Chittor Park in Delhi, which is an East Pakistan displaced persons colony, or as the Haryanvi bus conductors used to call it, refugee colony. So it was clear that she was Bangladeshi and he, with his characteristic nose, he turned out to be Italian. Well, one thing led to another, and to summarize, it turns out that he was my wife's colleague in the European delegation embassy. And when he learned of my existence, he asked Anne, and so what does your husband do? And she told him the truth. He washes dishes, and to avoid people, he writes books. And Fabrizio, his name is Fabrizio. Fabrizio said, "Oh, I'd I wish I could write. I'd like someone to write the story of my life. I'm encapsulating, our conversations over 4 years. He didn't. You can say this once and then not refer to it again. But he referred to it more than once. And when I heard what he, for example, on the terrace of that apartment block, suddenly there was an enormous swarm of bees one day, and huge. And some of the residents panicked and said, "Oh, call pest control." And Fabrizio said, "No, it's the queen bee is dead, and they're only going to select another queen. It'll finish in half an hour, and then you don't have to do anything. They will not attack." How does he know that? Well, because he worked
as a
beekeeper in the monastery, etc.
Right.
So when he went on and on, those days I was working on the earlier book on villainy, and once the COVID years were over, he was going to be posted to Phnom Penh. So before he left, we sat down every afternoon for about a month. He just talked. I took notes. And then once he had left, I sent him 5 to 6 questions per day on WhatsApp, long-live WhatsApp. And he very patiently, diligently replied. So that's it. So the story is, in essence, true. But, one concocts.
Right. So I think when I heard this, what the sort of provenance was of this book, something about the narrative started to make sense, because it's a book that I don't want to give too many spoilers, but he's already given one away by saying he was on his way to Phnom Penh. The fact is that he does become a monk, but then that journey doesn't just end there. He then moves on. He leaves his life as a monk, and he starts working with an NGO, and it carries on. So I was wondering whether Upamanyu had chosen to make a statement that somebody who goes into a monastery in this day and age would eventually not find it sufficiently connected to real life, etc., etc. And was that his message? Clearly, that wasn't quite his message. It was more the life story, the trajectory that the life had taken. But what is very clearly all done by the writer in Upamanyu, as opposed to the person who's just listening to someone else's story, is the fact that the way the character of this young man, Lorenzo, comes across. I was also very pleasantly surprised, because you do get drawn to Lorenzo. He, in an interesting way, he is somebody whose story you want to know more about. You want to keep reading, iske baad, what will happen, what is he going to do? But at the same time, he's not a very dramatic character. In fact, I would say that very little of his inner emotional life is ever really expressed in the book. It's more the things he chooses to do. And was that a deliberate choice that you made as a writer? Like, for example, the fact that he decides to become a monk. We get to know that when he actually does it. We never see the inner journey except through his actions. So there's a sense always that we're seeing him through his actions.
Yeah, that's deliberate, of course, because what I was trying to do was to portray this character who's interesting, but who's at the same time remote. He's there. He's doing things that, to me, are incomprehensible. And yet, at the same time, his urge, his religious, spiritual urge is terribly genuine. I mean, so you say, okay, here is this weirdo. I mean, you know, who the hell at the age of 22 would enter a monastery? And you think, well, there are lots of people who do the same thing here, who join some mission or the other, and what they do is incomprehensible. But that doesn't. It's incomprehensible only to me. For him, it's a very genuine search. It's also incomprehensible to his own family. I mean, his own family is extremely. They are very Catholic, and yet at the same time, his mother, to whom he is deeply attached, is aghast
when he decides.
When he announces that, you know, I'm going to just join a monastery. And also, as I mentioned briefly at the end of the book, it's like a life lived anti-clockwise. I mean, in the sense, lots of, some people do at the end of a long life decide to turn spiritual, give it all up. But he starts from that point. He starts by giving it all up. And then as there's a guru in the book, also Italian, and as his guru tells him at two significant moments, life is pulling you back. Mm-hmm. It's not as though you can escape the demands of normal living. So there were times when I thought, can we not send him to Bangladesh? Can I just, send him to India and, just have him chopped up or something? I said, no, that would really be untrue in a fundamental sense to the importance of what he went through. And it's not, even for him, it's not in any way a criticism of the monastic life as an institution.
Yeah, he makes that clear.
He makes that, it's important for him. In fact, when we were discussing the book, he said, this has to come through very forcefully. There is, he never told me this, but there's a quotation from Dostoevsky on a character in Karamazov who says, Father Zosima, who says, a monk is what every human being ought to be. And that, the real life Lorenzo liked very much. He said, that's just it. You can retain within you the spiritual discipline of a monk and yet live a normal life.
Right, while we're talking, it's all sounding as if the book is really kind of very serious and very intense. Actually, it's a wonderful read because Upamanyu can't really stop himself from peeping through and making all sorts of asides and irreverent comments that come through, which one of them, for example, I had to note down, where he's talking about a particular father. And he says, Father Sherwood, who looks like a football fan, the sort who gives the game a bad name. The book is constantly full of all these things. And when he's talking about several episodes in the book, hilarious little vignettes and little sort of asides and things like that. I want you to read something so that you can show us how the writing is.
Well, I thought we could, I thought I'd read a bit from the time he goes to wash clothes in...
yes.
Because what was nice, interesting for me was I had to adopt a different tone. I mean, the first half is set in Italy. So the tone of the book is different. It's an Indian describing an Italian's life in Italy. But when the real life Lorenzo read the first, I sent him the draft twice. He said, it's fine, it's okay. But when it comes to the second half of the book, which is set in Bangladesh, I had to adopt the tone of Bangladesh is like Bengal. I mean, I had to adopt the tone of a European seeing Bangladesh for the first time. And when we were discussing these things, I told him this, I said, and he was quick to grasp the point. I said, no, don't tell me, stuff that I'm likely to know. Tell me what struck you when you first visited. And you must have taken notes, because he told me things like, he'll never forget those earthen bowls at the bottom filled with water at the
foot of the bed and the tables,
of each table and chair in Dhaka, because he said that's the only way to keep the ants away. Ditto for the in the monastery in Praglia. Sorry, what page is it?
The passage is here. It's page 213.
In the monastery in Praglia, there were washing machines, which was, there's some pages devoted to washing machine duty, which, is clearly not the kind of thing he wants to do for the rest of his life. And then,
so there's this lovely little passage where he is being sent to do his laundry for the first time in Bangladesh. And he is being told that there's the tank, there's the water tank, the pukur, and go and wash your clothes there. So he is sort of escorted there, and then he is left there to carry on with the job, and he doesn't have a clue about what he's supposed to do. So there's a lovely description here, page 213.
Yeah, I'll just tell you. So Mikhail is the Bangladeshi, a boy really. He's a very young man who is also a resident of the monastery in a small village in Khulna. Whenever you're free, says Mikhail shyly on the third morning, I thought I could take you through the village and show you the pukur where you could, whenever necessary, wash your clothes. The source of the water of the ashram is the tube well behind the cow shed. It fills up a plastic tank abutting the boundary wall. Water is then pumped up, usually once a day, to a smaller second tank on the roof. At least once every forenoon can be heard all across the compound Saraswati's screech from the kitchen. Abir, Maruf, one of you switch on the pump. No water. The underground water in that part of the country is so chock-a-block full of minerals, iron predominantly and some gypsum, that when left to stand in a bucket, it turns red in a matter of minutes. In the tank on the roof, the iron decants in some measure, and the filter in the kitchen retains some more of it. The water is then boiled in the largest aluminium kettle that Lorenzo has ever seen and cooled. It still tastes like rust. In a couple of days, his hair too begins to feel like rust. To use that same water to wash clothes as well would mean running the pump more than once a day, thereby jacking up maintenance and electricity charges. The economics was as simple as that. So on the fourth day after his arrival, Lorenzo steps out of the ashram for the first time. He carries with him his dirty linen bundled up in his lungi and the cake of wheel laundry soap that sits on the windowsill of the bathroom. He and Mikhail use the door in the boundary wall that gives on to the path that leads to the village. Shyal, the dog, is rather eager to accompany them, but is prevented by Maruf, holding on to his collar. He barks his agitated disappointment. Some dog somewhere responds. The pukur, Lorenzo discovers, is not a natural pond, but an artificial rectangular tank of quite respectable a size. It should be, he estimates, a good 30 meters by 15. It is rain-fed, apparently, and its water algae green. He wonders whether he would like, for the rest of his life, to wear clothes all of an unusual pea-greenish tinge. Along one length and breadth of the tank, half a dozen brick steps lead down to the water. The arrival of the duo of monks disturbs a group of women who are occupied with the family laundry. The chatter stops. They all know who Mikhail is, of course, and can guess who Lorenzo is. They smile and snicker. It is their way of saying, hello, welcome. Hands fly up to cover the top of the head with the part of the sari that has slipped down to the nape of the neck. Decorous once more, they again simper demurely and wait for the arrivals to initiate a conversation. Mikhail introduces Lorenzo with, Babu too has come to wash his clothes. The ladies are delighted at the opportunity for some unrestrained merriment. And then Mikhail, playing the rat, murmurs, I have to leave you now. Go and attend the village Durga Puja committee meeting as their advisor. You'll be able to find your way back to the ashram? The sinking ship descends 2 steps towards the water. Careful, exclaims the matron with a dark, weather-beaten face. The stairs can be very slippery. Safest if you take them barefoot. Lorenzo turns, ascends, jettisons his slippers, descends again. Weather-beaten is right. He does feel safer. He has to try and clutch the cold brick with his curled toes. He stops on the second last step above the water. At close quarters, it doesn't look that filthy, just rather green. Is it physics? Water of a certain depth will always appear green, at other depths blue, gray. What about gray-green? He looks up and about. They are waiting to see what he will do. Well, he is waiting to see what they will do so that he can copy them. The rule of Saint Benedict, he has an urge to tell them, has a couple of resonant lines on kitchen utensils, but absolutely nothing on washing one's dirty linen in a public tank in the company of strangers, and female strangers at that. Eventually, of course, he does get the hang of it and even finds it fun, a community activity, and an occasion for sharing anecdotes and asking after the health of others, not solitary at all, like sitting in the lavanderia in Praglia watching 2 enormous washing machines spin and whir, click and hum. And at the tank he discovers that as in almost all human effort, even in the matter of washing clothes, there may exist more than one school of thought. One wets the clothes by dunking them in the water, then spreading them flat on the brick, scrubs them with soap across and through and over, till one has worked up a good lather. Then the schools diverge. One set of ladies, no doubt seeing the laundry in their hands as surrogate husband or mother-in-law, with dreadful intensity and singleness of purpose, lifts up the clothes and smashes them mercilessly and repeatedly on the steps, as one would while beating someone to death with a cricket bat. Gentler souls like Lorenzo much prefer the approach of the other school, which, squatting on the steps and gathering the lathered clothes up into an unwieldy ball, bounces them rapidly but delicately on the brick, turning them over and over so that no edge or surface escapes the treatment. The clothes seem to like the ministration, for in the process they emit a soft, rhythmical, squelchy noise. It is a happy sound, akin to the gurgles of a baby during a gentle oil massage.
That's the end of that particular passage. And I was thinking when I was reading it that I haven't often read such a detailed and carefully observed description of washing of clothes. And yet when you do read it, the images come, the way the thrashing of the clothes on the stone. So it's very well written. Thank you. So we've given you a sense of the book now, and I'd like to open this out to questions. Does anybody want to ask anything? Given that this is, which number novel is this now, Upamanyu, of yours? The
ninth, if you include the collection of short stories as a
Right.
as a book. Yeah,
Right.
I do, because I see it as clearing arrears.
Okay. So his ninth book. Any questions? Would you like to know? Yes, somebody in the first row. Yeah, it's live now.
Yeah, hi. This is Aditya,
Hi.
Aditya Basu. I'm in the digital media space for a long time. So, have you, over these years, have you seen your perspective change and the way you look at life change? Is it reflecting back on the books that you have, these 9 books? Is there any particular genre you are focusing on, or it's like a diverse subjects and your perceptions are changing as we are all growing older, right? So, where do you see yourself going, as a writer perspective wise?
Well, I mean, unless you can put something of yourself in the subject matter, I don't think you can take up that subject matter. I mean, it's not as though I write, I don't mean to offend, it's not as though I write like a journalist who has a deadline to meet, who will cover a political rally one day and a literature festival on another. No, it's just that because you find a subject matter interesting, you get into it. Certainly one ages. I was asked the other day whether in this day and age I could have written English August. And I said, of course you could, but it just would have been a very different book. It's, and certainly a book like Lorenzo interested me because that man is, to me, is a very interesting figure. Just as, in a very different way, the preceding book, Villainy, interested me because, well, for different reasons, because, it began, because it's a COVID book. There was just so much death going around. And then once you enter that, there's no, actually in some ways you can't control where you can't control where you will go.
Right. So I think what he's trying to say is that there's an investment from his side into the subject matter. So in a sense, each new work is sort of a new kind of experience or direction, really?
Well, yeah, I mean, no, it's simpler than that. I mean, unless the subject matter interests you, unless you sort of give something of yourself in the writing of it, why should you get into it?
Why should you get into it?
I guess you are trying to say the subject finds you.
I mean, yeah, the writer is not that passive. There are 100 different themes around you. Some of them you just won't do. Some of them you begin and then you see it's already been done. Some of them there was another book, for example, there are various reasons. There was another person's life I found interesting, but this is several years ago. And I spent, several man-hours, talking to him and saying that, look, can we just sit down and talk? And he backed out. So at the end, he just didn't want to
He didn't want to proceed.
to give himself.
Right.
So there are various reasons, and some, I mean, in fact, both Lorenzo, the real life Lorenzo, both of us, I think, have been fortunate in being able to hit it off.
Right. Any other questions? Yes, Alka. This will be the last question.
While I'm looking forward to reading the book, Upamanyu, you just now mentioned the fact saying that, a writer is not really passive. But I'm just wondering, this is not really either a biography or a memoir. You've said it is part truth, part fiction. How did you get into the skin of Fabrizio, Lorenzo, whatever, and moving between two continents, Italy and Bangladesh? These are two different continents. Have you lived in both these countries? How did you kind of maneuver through the emotions and, feelings of this character who you are tracing?
I just followed him. He was very, very precise about his life in Italy, and what seemed unclear to me, I would dig out of him. I would, down to the color of the walls of the room. If you're going down this corridor, what does he see on his right, etc. It became different in Bangladesh because I've never been, but that's where my parents come from. But as I said, Bangladesh, you can feel it. It's rural Bengal. So I said, I can sense all that. Tell me what struck you when you first went. So as I said, those bowls of water at the foot of the leg of each table. He found, for example, which was funny, he said, I was just struck by the colors of Bangladesh.
There's a lot of that in the book, yeah.
I was just struck by the colors, so I said, what do you mean? And he said, just the colors of the clothes and the contrast with that, and I've said it in the book, and the drabness of the monsoon. So the perspective changes, but I think I've been fortunate in not losing that perspective and seeing it as far as is possible with his eyes.
Yeah. Yeah, I think following him, I think that was the key to the answer.
Yeah.
So we're out of time. I think we'll bring this session to a conclusion. Thank you so much, Upamanyu.
Thank you.
I'm so glad that we had the privilege of actually featuring this book in the festival. I know it's just very recently come out, so it was lovely to get the opportunity to have you here with us again. And thank you very much for that.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you
Thank
for
you
being
all.
such a wonderful audience. Thank you.